Hi, I'm Brandon with Aspen Plumbing. Just wanted to make a little video about wet venting. I'm here in Washington State. We work out of the UPC code book, right? And when I read this book, it was very, very, very confusing for a big dummy like me. And, I like to train my guys and try to put things in a little bit layman's terms and what the wordage is in our code book. So, today we'll talk about wet venting, and hopefully this will make sense to most of you guys. So, okay, here I got a couple of demonstrations. We have on this one we have a toilet and we have a lavatory right here, right on this diagram, and then on this diagram we have a toilet and a kitchen line up here, up from the toilet. So let's start with the lav here. Right here, right, we have our toilet. This obviously gravity, right, things are going downhill, so toilet is dumping down into here, right? This section right here is considered our vent for a toilet, correct? But right now we have a lav dumping into the vent for our toilet the way we ran it here, right? This is what we call wet venting. So here, we'd come up, this is a trap arm off for a vent, this is a main stack line, right? So in between our lav here and our toilet here, this section right here would be considered a wet vent section, right? So in order to do something like this and to pass inspection to be up to code, we have to think about a couple things here, right? We need to think about what's the minimum size vent for a toilet. And in UPC code book here in Washington State, right, our minimum size vent for a toilet is 2 inches. But in our code book, I have it pulled up right here, it says each wet vented section shall be not less than 1 pipe size exceeding the required minimum waste pipe size of the upper fixture, or shall be 1 pipe size exceeding the required minimum pipe size for the sum of the fixture units served by such wet vented section. That sounds very confusing, right? It's actually very, very simple. What that means is this wet vented section is dictated on the size of our drain for our fixture dumping into our wet vented section, correct? So in this case, we have a lav on the uppermost fixture, which our minimum drain for a lav is 1.25 inches, right? 1.25 inches is a minimum in our code book, right? In our code book. So we're not talking about in the field plumbing, right? When I'm in the field plumbing, right, my minimum size drain for a lav is going to be 1.5 inches, right? But when I'm taking my test and I'm studying in the code book, we're going on actual minimums here, right? So we're not confusing real world with code book stuff, right? So our minimum size drain for a lav is 1.25 inches, right? So in order to make this a true wet vent to be up to code, this section would need to be 1 pipe size bigger than the minimum drain for our upper fixture. So 1 pipe size bigger than 1.25 inches for a lav is 1.5 inches, right? So this section right here, right, would, by wet venting sections, we would need to be 1.5 inches because that lav up there, right? 1.5 inches though does not work with our toilets. So our toilet minimum vent, like we were talking about at the beginning, is 2 inches, right? So if we keep this 3-inch pipe here, right, this section can be 2 inch here. It's wet venting our toilet. Our lav is right here, right? This is going to be 1.25 inches minimum size trap arm off of our stack, and then our vent going out is going to have to stay 2 inches because it is serving our toilet here. So if we were to keep this 2-inch drain or 2-inch vent like we would normally do for a toilet without a wet venting section, if there was a lav at the top, this would work just fine. But now we're going to go over to our other diagram here. So now instead of a lav causing this section to be a wet vent, we now have a kitchen line. This is where it's going to start affecting you when you have bigger fixture loads at our uppermost section. So this is considered a trap arm coming off of our stack, right? This is considered a drain line, but it's also considered a vent, right? It's what we call a wet vent. Minimum drain for kitchen, not trap arm, we're talking about minimum drain size, is 2 inches, right? So if our toilet, just like this one, if we kept this 2 inches, would that work for a wet vent with our kitchen above the toilet? It would not, because the minimum size upper fixture section is 2-inch vent. And in our code book is telling us we need to go 1 pipe size bigger than our minimum drain for our upper fixture. So now, in this case, with a kitchen up top, right, this section right here is going to have to be bushed up to 3 inches. This can now be 1.5 inches for a trap arm. And this up here, if you read your code book, can now, since this section here is not wet vented, this to this is a traditional vent, right? We have no fixtures dumping in up here. This is just going to go out the roof. This can now go back down to 2 inches, right? We got 2 fixtures for our kitchen sink, right? I'm actually just making this up, I forgot. Let's say we got 2 fixtures here, 4 fixtures here, 6 fixtures, whatever. It's completely wrong, but it doesn't matter. Our venting now can go down to 2 inches here, right? Because we're in no more wet vent. So, you know, when we're doing wet vents, you know, the biggest thing is remembering, right, our upper fixture that's causing this section to be a wet vent, right? Because it is dumping water down the vent of this toilet, right? This lab is dumping water down the vent for this toilet. That's what a wet vent is. Needs to be 1 pipe size bigger than our upper fixture, right? So when we think about wet vents, we got to think about minimum size vent. For a lower fixture, we got to think about minimum size drain for upper fixture, so we could go 1 pipe size bigger. And if that means 1 pipe size bigger of our upper fixture is smaller than our minimum size vent for a lower fixture, then we need to upsize this. Well, I mean, it wouldn't really be considered upsize. It would still be a 2-inch vent, right? Which if we need to go 1 pipe size bigger than the lab here, which is 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, all we're doing is making this 2-inch. So now it's 2 pipe sizes bigger than the lab, which is totally fine. Bigger rather than smaller, you'll pass inspection.